Hey guys, and this week our open retest is actually going to be a 2 years past test. It's 18.4 and 20.3, and who knows, maybe it's 22 point something. So when we do these, I want you guys to really try to simulate the same open format that you would have. So that I want you to, if possible, have someone judging you. If possible, lay out the floor exactly like you would in open. Let's do our best to recreate that environment and that added stress, which you would be amazed, even when you do that just in training, how much stress that actually adds. And it's a skill to be practiced. So this is our go through the standards and figure out how we can best attack this workout. So our workout is Diane, followed by Dan with handstand walking. So it's 21:15:9 of deadlifts and handstand push-ups to this really goofy standard, which we will get to the standard full breakdown at the end of this video. We're gonna start with tips on how to attack this workout essentially, and then we'll go into the standards. But so it's 21:15:9 of deadlifts, handstand push-ups, and then we move into deadlifts and handstand walk. So my advice to you is to break Diane early and often. The workout doesn't really start until the second half if you're in an elite level, and if you're not an elite level, every handstand push-up is a gold mine with this standard. Especially in training, if you just guys do normal handstand push-ups, you can be totally good at normal handstand push-ups, and these can absolutely derail you. So don't come out swinging. Be conservative with your sets and always keep 1 rep in the tank at least. If you have a struggle bus rep on a handstand push-up, it's time to kick down. It doesn't matter if that was only a single. You do not want to risk that failure. Now, one thing that really helps a lot here with your handstand push-ups is the weight distribution in your hand, especially if you have trouble falling off the wall. If your weight is back on the heel of your hand exclusively, your weight is further back and you have a more tendency to fall off the wall. So try to really get your weight to be forward in your hand a little bit more and envision the weights right in the knuckles. So I always like to cue up heavy fingertips there, and that really does help to stay on the wall and use a better press position. Now, when we do these handstand push-ups, the standards are goofy, and whether there's a standard or not, we want to have as much internal pressure as you possibly can. So once we kick up to the top of the handstand push-up, I want you to really get your air, get tight, and then you're not gonna relax at the bottom. So this is what it looks like. So Maggie's gonna kick up here. At the top, get your air, big breath, get tight, and then head on the floor, knees to your chest, kick and bunch without having a big relax. One thing that a lot of people get caught up on when doing handstand push-ups is you'll go head on the floor and then fully relax and move and resituate the hands. This makes it really difficult to recreate your upward momentum. Think about a back squat. If you got to the bottom of the back squat and then relaxed and crumpled, you'd have a hell of a time standing back up. Same concept here. So a bad rep here, comes down, kind of repositions the hands, and then goes up for the rep. That's gonna cost you a lot more energy. So really focus on air at the top, stay tight at the bottom, and then go. Next is the knees. When we do kipping handstand push-ups, you can get a massive benefit from the hips if this is done correctly. So go ahead and kick on up, Maggie. One thing that's super common is go ahead on the floor and now bring just your knees down. So if this happens, now all we get is knee and leg extension this way. We get no hip. So if you watch your hip, there's not enough hip extension. So we have to make sure to bring your knees down past your hip, and you can see that hip turn over. Now you can really explode to come up and use your hip drive. That's crucial, especially with this goofy standard. It's gonna tax your shoulders trying to get your feet over this line. Use your hips more than you need to. There's no bonus points for making this harder on yourself. So use those freaking hips. With the handstand walking, we'll talk, the deadlifts are pretty straightforward. You guys know how to deadlift. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse that way. The only thing I'll tell you with the deadlifts is that you need to warm up in the grip that you use. So if you're a mongoloid like me and you like to double over and hook grip everything, start that way, keep it that way. If you know you're gonna switch grip at some point, start that way. If you switch grip and hook grip, and you're locked onto that sumbitch. Okay, now handstand walking, kind of similar standards or similar concept is we want the weight in the center of your hands. When we're handstand walking, think about the knuckles are heavy, fingertips have weight in them, and our eyeballs should be right in between our hands. So as I'm upside down, I'm gonna look right in between my fingertips the whole time. On the handstand walking, if you're new to this, one thing that is, I'd say is the most common mistake is to try to move the hands too early before your momentum has carried you forward. So if I'm on my way up and I start trying to move my hands, there's no way for me to actually do that. When I think of handstand walking, I like to think of this as controlled falling, and this is a really goofy visual, but if you can envision being on your feet, when you take a step, you have hamstrings, you can pull yourself forward, and that's how we generate forward momentum. When we're handstand walking, we don't have those hamstrings, so we have to use our momentum. So handstand walking essentially looks like this. We lock the legs out, which is our arms, and then we have to get our body weight to bring us forward, and once we feel like we're falling, we move our hands. And that looks silly as hell, but that's how you should envision yourself handstand walking. Lead with your body weight, follow with the hands. Now, as we get into our standards, this one is not my favorite. I really don't like these standards, but that's really irrelevant. We're gonna do it one way or another if they bring this up as a retest. So some of the things that we have to do is we have to get on the floor. This line is just taped onto our mat permanently, so don't bother that, you don't need it. But you'll use the same surface that you're gonna do your handstands on. So if you're gonna use a mat, you have to stand on the mat to do these measurements. When you stand, your heels need to be on the wall, feet are at hip width, and then we're gonna take your forearm, jam it against the wall, and we're gonna measure from the wall to the furthest knuckle. Okay, so as I go, I'm gonna see here, you can come on in with the camera here, John, and I can see that Maggie's got a 12.5-inch length of the forearm. So now we take that 12.5, and we Albert Einstein it, and we go down to 6.25. So we're gonna go 6.25 is now our measurement that we'll use. And we're gonna mark per head. Go ahead, you're so good. So we're gonna take a flat surface like a clipboard or a whiteboard, and we're gonna put that right on top of her head. And the bottom of the tape is the level of her head. Then I will measure, go ahead and step out. Then I will measure 6.25 from the bottom of the tape, and that will give me the top of the line. When you guys set this up, make sure to have the top of the tape your mark, because then it's super clear when the heels are over the tape. If you try to do it to where the bottom, then it's really like kind of sketchy in this, it becomes a gray area. So make sure that the top of your tape is where that mark goes to. And now my heels need to clear the actual tape. Okay. Now, your hands can be in any position, but this is gonna force you, everybody's proportions are a little bit different, but more than likely, this is gonna be considerably harder than normal handstand push-ups. The things that you have to do to create a little bit more length in yourself here is to make sure your hands are narrow. So I would bring your hands in a little bit narrower than typical, especially if you're having issues getting your feet over the line, and keep your rib cage down. So if I go ahead, Maggie, go ahead and go with wide hands, and let's get you into a really arched position when you're up overhead. Okay, so it's really difficult for her to kind of get that. The more arched, so the more she's arching her back, the lower her feet are getting. Now, go ahead and come down. Let's bring your hands in narrower and get really straight and stacked, rib cage down. Boom, we have 2 inches over the tape here. So you know that if you stay in a very straight position, hollow body position, you know that we're gonna be good on that rep. The next thing to consider is the rep doesn't start until your heels are over the line and you're in a supported position. So you have to get there first, and then your judge will give you the good. You'll go down, do your handstand push-up, and you have to return to both heels over the line before there's a good rep. You ready to do a couple reps?
Yes.
All right, here we go. So as she kicks up, good. Not quite. This is perfect. Good. You're all right. This is how it goes. This might be you.
Harder.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Good. 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 And that's how I want you guys to judge this, okay? So, next. Good job, Maggie. Way to go. Way to go. So that's how I want you guys to judge this. This is a real pain in the ass, but it's going to be a pain in the ass either way, and I guarantee you will have rather have done this correctly and been tough on yourself now and then not panic if this comes back up in this year's Open. So hold yourself to these standards. Get a judge that will actually freaking no-rep you, preferably not a spouse that causes problems at home, and let's do this for real. Now the rest of the floor setup, everybody's gym is different, but I would do as best as you can to try to make it to where you have your deadlift bar right next to your handstand push-ups, and then the start of your handstand walk lines will go from here away from the wall, okay? I think that's all that I've got on this one. Let's break up Diane early and often. Keep your eyeballs between your hands and stack your bones when you handstand walk, and make sure you get your freaking heels over that tape line before you do your handstand push-up. Have fun with this one, guys.